Hi, everybody. BritSimon here. So I've got some interesting information for you. It's actually a possible mock-up version or leaked mock-up version of the DV2027 entry form with a couple of very notable differences to previous years. So firstly, let me give credit where credit is due. I owe a thank you to a gentleman called Mohammed from Morocco who found this form on a website which I consider to be somewhat legitimate. And I've got to be a little bit careful here because I can't be 100% sure that this is going to be the final version of the form. But it does show two things that I think are interesting. One is the format that the payment system would look like. And it makes sense to me. Exactly what they're showing here does make sense. But also the second thing is in this mock-up, it shows that the passport would be required and some information about how that would work. Now, I can't be 100% sure at this point that the passport rule is going to be included for DV 2027. We have to wait and see what the official announcement actually says. But I'll show you the information, and you can form your own opinion as to whether or not this is really how it's going to look, or whether this mock-up represents options that they're considering, whether or not to include the passport rule along with the new $1 entry fee. So I'll show you the form, and I'll show you some of the things that are the same as previous years, and then the differences in this particular mock-up form. Okay, so let's have a look at it. So it's a PDF. The PDF is titled AES entry form, which is the applicant entry system. And so this is a mock-up that is partially sort of based on previous year's forms, and information hasn't changed. And then there are two very notable inclusions in this particular version. This may be, by the way, completely unrealistic. I don't think it's completely unrealistic, but it's possible. We have to wait and see, obviously, when we see the final version of the form. Okay, so the first page is the normal page. It's got entrant information there. It's the same that we would see in any year. So you put in your name and your sex, male or female, birth date, city where you're born, and so on. And then you choose the country where you're born, which is very important. You have to list the country where you're born. It's not important to list the country where you're living at this point. This is about where you were born, okay? Very specific about that. Then the country of eligibility for the DV program. Again, that's not necessarily because of where you're living today or what citizenships you have. The normal eligibility for the DV lottery is based on your country of birth. If for some reason you have to vary that, and there are a couple of exceptions to that rule, then you have to be very careful about those exceptions and use question number 6 for that. But be very careful. I don't want you to choose that unless you understand what you're doing, and wait until I give proper instructions on that once the process has been announced officially and we know what will be in the form. Okay. Okay, so then this is the first surprising new thing, right? The passport page. It's asking for information about the passport. The first, the last name, first name, and middle name. The passport number, the month, date, and year of the expiration date of the passport, and the country of issuance. Then, interestingly, it's asking for you to take a photo of the bio page and signature page of your passport and upload that. And it says, check the instructions for the 2027 Diversity Immigrant Visa Program for details on how the digital image should look. So we're going to have to wait for that information to see whether that really is part of the DV lottery process. But it seems that they are trying to implement the passport rule, even if it's not 100% certain at this point that they do. Okay. So there are, again, we've had the passport rule before, I should probably explain. in 2019, the rule was introduced under the first Trump administration. And at that time, the rules were very similar, but you didn't have to take a photo, as far as I remember, of the passport itself. There were a couple of exceptions in that previous period, and those exceptions are back. So if you're stateless, or if you're a national of a communist-controlled country where you can't get a passport and so on, there's a couple of distinct exceptions that are mentioned here. But generally speaking, if they implement the passport rule, you will have to have a passport that is unexpired on the day that you enter the lottery process, and that is only for the principal applicant. So you don't necessarily have to have a passport for each of your children, but you have to have a passport in order to create your own entry, and then include your spouse and include your children in that entry. And so only the principal applicant for each entry needs the passport if they introduce the passport rule, which I'm not 100% certain they will do, but there seems to be strong evidence to say they're going to try and do that based on this form. Okay. All right, and then we go back to the form as is normal. It asks for the photograph and the mailing address and so on. It goes through various information, the country where you live today, the phone number, your email address, and that sort of stuff, your level of education achieved as of today, meaning as of when you enter the lottery. It asks for your marital status and the number of children. These questions, number 14 and 15, probably account for most of the sad stories that I have to deal with every year. People that don't listen to the bloody instructions. The instructions are so simple. They're all here, but people every single year don't put their marital status in correctly. They say they're single when actually they're married, or they say they're married when actually they're single. They don't list all of their children. You're supposed to list all of your children, your biological children, your legally adopted children, and stepchildren. Stepchildren are children that you acquire through marriage. So that often trips people up. They think that because their stepchild is not living with them anymore, that stepchild is living with the previous partner, that they don't have to they don't have to include that stepchild, but actually that stepchild has to be included in the form. So all of your children who are under 21 and unmarried on the day that you enter the lottery have to be included. If you don't include children, you will be disqualified later. If you say you're single and you're married, or you say you're married and you're single, or if you try and claim that you're legally separated and you don't have the paperwork for that, all of those mistakes will result in you being disqualified. So these two questions are massively important. Please pay attention to that when it comes time to enter the lottery. And then we have the derivatives page, where you enter the children's information or the spouse's information. You have to upload the photo for the children and the spouse. You can only have one spouse, by the way. I've just spoke to someone the other day who entered his 3 wives as I think the first wife was entered as the spouse, and the other 2 wives were entered as children. And that person then got selected in the lottery and is guaranteed to get disqualified at the interview if they're stupid enough to go to the interview. And that's exactly what I told this person. So it's so easy to screw up a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity by not paying attention or not taking a few minutes to just ask me the question before entering. Okay, so when it comes to do the entry, by the way, please, just if you don't understand the entry, just ask me a question. You can go to my blog at BritSimonSays.com. You can come to my YouTube channel and you can ask me a question there. You can find me in some of the Telegram channels. So, there is plenty of ways you can ask me the question. If you're not sure how to enter the lottery in some specific case, ask first. Don't just enter making your own mind up and thinking it will be okay, that you can fix it later, because mostly you can't fix it later. Okay. All right, and then this is another new part of the form. This is where the $1 fee is going to be implemented. So you get to a certain point after you've entered all of your information and your derivative information and your passport potentially. Maybe there'll be the passport page, maybe there won't. We don't know. And then it will come to this page and it'll say proceed to payment. And this is new for this year, the first time ever that they've had the payment page. And here's what the payment page will probably look like. This makes perfect sense. All of these fields are generally required when you're going to take a payment. And so these are, probably the legitimate fields that will be there. So they're asking for the account holder first name, middle initial, and last name. The card type, which is Visa, MasterCard, that's what that means, card type. The card number, which is usually a 16-digit number, can be 15 digits, but it's usually 16 digits. The security code, which is on the back of the credit card normally, and the expiration date. And then they ask for the billing address for that card. Now, let me just answer a couple of questions that I know some of you will have. It is possible that you won't have a credit card or a debit card that you can use for your own entry. And in that situation, if there is somebody else that's willing to enter that information for you to be able to pay that $1 fee, that's fine. It's not going to be a problem. If that is, for example, someone at the internet cafe where you're entering your information, that's fine. If that's going to be a family member, that's fine. You can use somebody else's credit card in order to enter this information. For goodness sake, make sure you've got a permission. Don't get into a situation where you're, where you've used somebody else's credit card without their permission and therefore get disqualified from your DV lottery win. But all of the information that's going to be in here is about the payment information. So the billing address of the person who owns the credit card and so on. And that person may be someone that that will enter for multiple entries, and that isn't going to cause a concern in terms of fraud or anything like that. Okay, so I'll give you more details about that when we get nearer the entry period and when we've got some of these instructions officially announced. Okay, and then that's it. Then there's a confirmation page, which is similar to previous year's confirmation page, although this one has been mocked up with 2027 information on there. It does mention the entry status check dates from May the 2nd, 2026. I think it's very likely, in fact, almost certain that date will actually be moved because of the delayed entry period. There is a specific reason why I'm saying that. There needs to be a certain gap between those two dates. And so I believe they're going to move the entry status checking period, but they cannot move the interview period. So this delay that we're experiencing at the moment can't go on forever. They need to actually move ahead with the next step. So that's the form. Is it real information? I don't know. I'm not 100% certain. I think it looks pretty legitimate. It looks pretty likely, but it might be a mock-up that has been used for internal discussions within the government to say, should we or should we not include the passport rule? How would it look if we included the passport rule? And very often developers working on applications like this will want those mock-ups to be able to have those discussions and then also develop the software. So it's very normal to see a design like this. We use systems like Figma and so on, but in a PDF like this kind of makes sense as well. You can have a look at the mock-up of the form. So I would say it looks fairly legitimate. It looks sort of real, but it is not an official announcement yet. So we have to be a bit cautious about assuming it's going to be exactly like this. I'm not 100% certain that the passport rule will be included. I'm 99.9% certain that the $1 fee will be included, because that's fundamentally the reason for the delay in the entry period. It's nothing to do with the shutdown that's now over. It's to do with the implementation of the $1 fee. That's why we're seeing the entry period delayed. And the government have made that very clear. You know, that's for sure. Okay, so if you're new to my channel and you haven't heard me talking about this, I've been doing this for about 13 years now, helping people through their entry process and also then through the processing once they've been selected. So I've helped well over 100,000 people get their green cards through the DV lottery process, and I'm enormously proud of that. And I hope that you will understand. And you'll hear about me if you do become a winner. You'll hear about me. I'm fairly famous in the DV lottery world. I've done some pretty important things. I've helped in several lawsuits before, both large lawsuits and small lawsuits. And in fact, even in 2025, I filed my own lawsuit against the government in order to get the UK entries selected, and that worked for DV25 and DV26. So I've made important and significant contributions to the community, and I provide all of this information without charge. I'm not a lawyer. I benefited from this program myself, and I wanted to give back, and so I've been doing that for a number of years. So by all means, do subscribe to my channel. You'll get the best information as and when that information is available, and sometimes ahead of time, just like today. So do please subscribe to my channel and make sure you're informed when the lottery period actually does open. And then if you win, you'll definitely be getting to know me as I guide you through the process of securing your green card. Okay? Thanks everybody for listening along. Good luck now. Bye-bye.